Forgiveness is one of the most powerful acts a person can undertake.
But forgiveness is not the same as pardon.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
Thank you for joining us today for today's Town Hall session. We're glad that you've been here before, and I know that you've come back again for another wonderful experience here at the Town Hall. Look forward to this particular discussion about forgiveness. It's an important topic. We've had it here on the program before, but today is a little bit of a different take. Before we get into our discussion, I'd like for you to meet our panelists. Let's begin with a gentleman to my right.
I'm James Winegardner. I'm the pastor of a congregation of Seventh-day Adventist people in Keene, Texas.
My name is Dan Levin. I serve as senior rabbi at Temple Bethel of Boca Raton, Florida.
My name is Canon John Peterson. I am an Episcopal priest, and I'm canonically a resident of the Diocese of Washington, D.C.
I'm Tom Plumbley. I'm a minister in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. I serve as senior minister at First Christian Church, Fort Worth, Texas.
My name is Mel Robeck. I'm Senior Professor of Church History and Ecumenics and Special Assistant to the President for Ecumenical Relations at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. I'm also an ordained minister with the Assemblies of God.
Hi, I'm Tony Matthews, and I'm the Senior Pastor at North Garland Baptist Fellowship in Garland, Texas.
Well, thank you everyone for being here today. As you can see, we have a really good panel assembled here from different perspectives, different religious backgrounds, and that's really what the American Town Hall is all about. Now, I would like for us to consider this subject as being one of the more important ones, although all of them are important on the Town Hall, but I think today's program is going to be special. Let's get right to our discussion. The Associated Press released an article that is both moving and inspiring. The headlines read, 25 years after Rwanda genocide, survivors forgive killers. In a photo, genocide survivor Laurentia Mukalemera, a Tutsi, is offered a cup of water by Tazien Inkundeya, a Hutu who murdered her husband and spent 8 years in prison for the killing and other crimes. The photo was taken right before being interviewed at his home in the Reconciliation Village in Rwanda. The article highlights the power of forgiveness and shows that 25 years after the genocide, the country has established 6 reconciliation villages, as they are called, where convicted perpetrators who have been released from prison after publicly apologizing for their crimes live side by side with genocide survivors who have professed forgiveness. Today, according to the article, Inkundeya lives nearby the widow of the man he killed, and somehow they are friends. Their children and grandchildren play and share lunch together. Their cows graze in the same field. He says, I am very grateful to her. Ever since I apologized to her after prison life, confessing to my crimes and asking her for forgiveness, she has accepted me. I even leave my children with her when I am away. Close quote. About 3,000 victims and perpetrators live in the villages established by Prison Fellowship Rwanda, a Christian organization and funded by the U.S. government, the United Nations, and other donors to promote healing in Rwanda from the gaping wounds left by the genocide. Many people all over the world are struggling with forgiving others. It's just simply difficult to let some things go, in particular injustices and wounds from the past. Can this demonstration of forgiveness help? Well, we would like our panelists to consider these things with these questions in mind. First of all, what is true forgiveness, and is there a time frame on how soon a person should forgive? Second question, what scriptural advice do you have for our viewers who are struggling to forgive someone who wounded them? And then finally, another question, what can the religious community learn from the reconciliation villages and from those who participate in the same? Well, that is our subject for today. As I said, it's a very important one. Each of us deals with this in one way or another because it's just a part of our lives. Let's go back now to those who helped to begin the program. Dr. Robeck, welcome to the program. You opened with a remark. Can you please elucidate?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. You know, forgiveness is not something that comes easily for most people, but I think it's an incredibly powerful gift if one can do that. And I've thought about the Rwanda situation and tried to think, are there any kinds of parallels to that? I would say probably the Truth and Reconciliation Commission meetings that were held in South Africa really, in a sense, set the stage for other things that could follow. And I think what we saw in there was, instead of people getting revenge and taking vengeance out on the perpetrators of the apartheid and all the crimes that went along with that, there was a great deal of forgiveness that came along. I think also of the Amish community in Pennsylvania. Remember about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, some guy went into a school and killed 5 young women and hurt another 5 and so forth. And that Amish community got together, and within days they had said, we forgive you for what you've done. And even more recently, I think in Dallas, where we had a young police officer, Amber Geiger, who had shot and killed a young man, Brant Jean, and she was found guilty of murder. When the family began to speak to her at the trial, or at the end of the trial, where they had the opportunity to speak, one young man, the brother of the man that was killed, went over, asked the judge if he could speak to her and give her a hug. And we saw the caption, we saw the picture. It was a very moving kind of a thing. Now, for that young man who said, I am a Christian and I want to forgive her, that was an extraordinary thing. But for many members of the family, that was not exactly the way they responded. I mean, it was a difficult thing for them to even watch him do that, because she had taken the life of one of their family members. I think all of us have the capability of giving forgiveness, offering forgiveness, but I think it takes an extraordinary person to say, yes, I really do forgive. You know, I've been attacked through the years for my ecumenical work by people within my own denomination in a variety of ways. Some of them are really nasty. And I went to the Lord. I said, Lord, I can carry this and I can hurt and, all of that, but I really want you to take away the pain from this, and I want to be able to forgive these people. And I can sit here now 15 years after the attacks and all of that and say, I have no enemies. I have only people that I care for. I understand now the fear, the ignorance, the kinds of motivations that went into all of their striking out against me. And I think if we hold all those kinds of things in, it only hurts us. We get angry, we go into rages, we don't treat other people appropriately. But forgiveness is really a wonderful gift. The last thing I want to say is, Jesus died for us according to the Christian gospel, and God sent him even though we were enemies, even though we were estranged, even though we were sinners. Christ died for us.
All right, thank you, Dr. Robeck. And let's go back then to Rabbi Levin. You also made an opening remark. Can you please expand those thoughts for us?
So I think it was incredibly moving to see that embrace of that young man towards the woman who committed that awful crime, and the situation that you described in your opening of what happened in Rwanda is also incredibly moving. And I think that part of what makes those events so moving is that there was a sense of ask and apology for forgiveness from the person who perpetrated the evil against a particular individual. In Jewish tradition, we're taught that God doesn't forgive the evil that we do to each other. That has to be a forgiveness that's granted between people after there has been honest accounting and apology and forgiveness sought. In Jewish tradition, there is a sense that a person is obligated to go to the one who was harmed and ask their forgiveness. And if that person refuses to give that forgiveness, then they have to go sincerely a second time. And if the person still refuses to grant that forgiveness, they have to go sincerely a third time. But if after that third time that person still refuses to grant that forgiveness, then that person who refuses to grant the forgiveness takes responsibility for the trespass. Because the idea of that creation of peace between people was seen to be such a higher value. And I think because we all profess traditions that embrace the holiness and the spiritual power of love, when we see that love bring people together, it's hard not to be moved by that. Simon Wiesenthal, who was a survivor of the Holocaust, wrote a book called The Sunflower. In The Sunflower, he describes an experience in 1943 where an SS officer who was wounded in the hospital needs help, and he is asked to attend on this soldier. And the soldier relates to him a story of a horrible atrocity that he participated in murdering 300 people. And he asks him, I need to ask a Jew for forgiveness. And he walked away, and he didn't give the forgiveness. And the next day he went to return, and the patient had died. And so this question haunted him, and he poses the question, should there be forgiveness, should there not? And there's dozens of people who are asked to respond to that question. Interestingly, Albert Speer, who was one of the SS officers who was noted for his public apology at the Nuremberg trials, said, do not give forgiveness. And there is a difference between pardon and forgiveness. Pardon excuses an act, and forgiveness is a release. And it's not a release of responsibility for the action. It is a release of anger and ownership and resentment that it claims on me. And so what I think is so powerful about these reconciliation villages is that people who perpetrated acts against others take responsibility for their actions, seek forgiveness, and then when that forgiveness is granted, they are able to establish real love between them.
All right, thank you very much. And then Canon Peterson, glad to have you here on the program. Your thoughts, please.
Thank you. I'm not going to speak about reconciliation per se, but I had the great privilege in May of 1995, less than a year after the genocide. At that time, I was the Secretary General of the Anglican Communion, and I accompanied Archbishop George Carey, the then Archbishop of Canterbury, to go to Rwanda to be a part of that healing process. And George Carey, the Archbishop, was one of the first people, religious leaders, to go to Rwanda following the genocide. What we saw was absolutely, totally horrific. It was a situation that Christians were killing Christians. Rwanda is the most Christian country in Africa, 90% Christian. It wasn't Muslims killing Christians, it was Christians killing Christians. Hutus killing Tutsis, Tutsis killing Hutus. And the first day we went to a village called Gahina. We took a helicopter there, a town on the Rwandan-Tanzania border. And there we were taken to a Roman Catholic church. The people had all fled to the Roman Catholic church for sanctuary, that they felt they were protected at the church. And in that compound, there were 4,000 skeletons of people who had been murdered on that fateful Saturday. Literally, to get into the church, now Rwanda doesn't have snow shovels, I'm a Minnesota boy, but it was like they had taken a snow shovel to make a path for the Archbishop and Mrs. Carey to make their way into the church. Totally strewn with bodies. And I'll never forget getting into the church and seeing literally in the church hundreds of, maybe thousands of bodies there in the sanctuary. I went to a kneeling desk to pray, and one skeleton absolutely stands out in my mind. It was a skeleton whose feet had been chopped off from his legs. And I remember praying just one thing that day, that he would have been killed before he had his legs chopped off. The events in Rwanda were horrific. And the whole issue is, how can reconciliation, how can one forgive in a situation like that?
All right, thank you. Wow, powerful testimony there. Let's come over, Reverend Plumbley, glad to have you here today. Your thoughts, please.
Thank you. I think this program touches on some of the deepest emotions that we can have, both emotions of revulsion, and of joy. And the question is, how can we move one to the other? I do think that sometimes people try to move quickly and artificially from the trauma of an act that's been perpetrated on them, against them, or against someone they love, out of a feeling of that they are somehow required to forgive and to do so without first having dealt emotionally, spiritually, to even get their head around what has happened. I think probably the most important word in your moderator statement that began the whole entire program, Mr. Moderator, is the word 25. These are behaviors that are taking place 25 years later. When you think of the story that the experience that Canon Peterson had, when you think of Simon Wiesenthal and the many stories that have been related out of the Holocaust, we wonder how one can ever move to a place of forgiveness. And we understand how difficult that is. Mm-hmm. Forgiveness, however, is key to human beings moving on in history. And we need to go there. We have to talk about it. We have to stand with each other as we do it.
Thank you. Pastor Winegardner, welcome to the program. Your
Thank
thoughts,
you.
and then we'll come over to Dr. Matthews.
God promises that He will remember our sins no more. So He is a forgiving God. That, I think, is the foundation of Christianity. Jesus also says that we're to be forgiven, but He also says that in order to be forgiven, we must forgive. He's really, really clear about that. And it's really tough, and it takes time because we're not God, and we can't say, all right, your sins are remembered no more. We have work to do on forgiveness, and it can take years and, as you point out, decades. There is another side to it, and it seems maybe frivolous in this context after hearing what the Canon had to say. But, you know, just because we forgive doesn't mean that we forget.
Right.
And so recently, a few years ago, we had a deacon who stole money from the offering as he collected it. And he asked for forgiveness, and we rebaptized him. And he felt forgiven, and he was forgiven, but he wasn't allowed to collect offering anymore. And we do the same for other problems, that we need to help protect them as well. So forgiveness also means helping to protect afterwards.
Thank you very much. Dr. Matthews.
Now, this is a powerful conversation. Several years ago when I was in Africa, I sat this close to missionaries to Rwanda, and they were talking to me about the massacres because they were there, and they had to just stop in the midst of it because of the trauma and the memories that they had. I think this is just powerful, powerful, powerful. It's such an example of love and forgiveness, and that word forgiveness has various meanings, and one such meaning is it means to send away. And I think when we forgive, we send away from our heart the anger and the hatred and the bitterness that we have towards someone who has harmed us, and is giving someone a new start, giving them a new start. And what helps me, and I agree with everything. I mean, we certainly can't forget. I think not forgetting highlights it's a powerful highlight of the genuineness of forgiveness. That's powerful. We don't have the capability to forget what someone has done to us, but to still forgive them in the midst of not forgetting, that's powerful. That's powerful. That's powerful. And I just hope that we all can embrace this and forgive each other. And let me just say real quickly, last thing is that the flip side of this is when people are forgiven, they need to forgive themselves. And I think this is something that we need to work on with individuals to forgive themselves, get to the place where they can forgive themselves.
And I'm afraid we're out of time for this segment, but the program's not over yet. We'll be back in just a few moments. Please stand by for this important message.
Thank you, Pastor Lutz. We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the Town Hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you, Pastor Lutz, and today's closing statements.
Thank you very much. I do look forward to hearing from you. Drop us a line, go to the website. You can send us an email from that format, or you can just send us a regular snail mail, or tell us what you'd like to hear discussed on future programs. We've had programs based upon comments of viewers like you, so please take advantage of this opportunity. Now let's go to our summary statements. Let's begin with the gentleman to my right, Dr. Winegardner.
Forgiveness is healing, but it's healing more to the forgiver than the forgiven. We need to recognize that forgiveness is for us and forgiveness is forever.
Thank you very much and for your participation today. Canon Peterson, your summation, please.
I think it's important to give credit where credit is due. And in April 2000, the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, instituted the nation's miraculous economic recovery, but also a radical forgiveness program. And that has been the context of what we've been speaking about today. But it became official government policy. And one of the major things they did is that the government no longer officially recognizes tribal and ethnic differences. It used to be on their identity cards, if they were Hutu or if they were Tutsi, and that has been removed. And certainly what has happened in Rwanda, in the way because of forgiveness, is because of the president and what he did in the radical forgiveness program.
Thank you. And for today's participation, Dr. Robeck, your summation, please.
Yes, I remember having lunch with a white father, a priest from Belgium, if I remember correctly, who was there in the midst of all of that. And he told me about how the soldiers came into his church and stood everybody against the wall and then shot them all except for 2 or 3 people who were not either Hutu or Tutsi. And I remember him sitting there and crying and wondering why he was one of the few that was left. He also told me the story of 2 men. They were from different tribes. They were neighbors. They were close friends. And one of them was given an ultimatum: you will either kill him or we will kill your entire family and you as well. So they talked it over together, and then they prayed together. And the man who was to be killed gave him permission to do that with the understanding that he was forgiven even before it had happened. It's little wonder that these kinds of things make the headlines in the news today.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Matthews,
Yes.
your summation.
In the article that the moderator mentioned, I think it's another powerful note that the killer said that I even leave my children with the widow when he's away. I think that is absolutely powerful, and it shows us that unforgiveness never hurts the other person, it hurts ourselves. And I'll leave us with the scripture in Ephesians: be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving each other just as God in Christ has also forgiven us.
Thank you. Reverend Plumbley, your summation.
Thank you. I wanted to center my last comment on these villages that apparently have been created in Rwanda, and say that they, to me, present a commentary on this notion that we have in our own country that crime requires this radical separation, and we have a very radical philosophy of American prisons of separating people from the rest of the world. It's also a commentary on the dehumanization of our enemies, the willingness to quickly refer to people as animals, as subhuman. When you see this kind of behavior, it takes away those kinds of things.
All right, thank you very much. Just a few seconds left here. Rabbi, your closing statement.
I think we have to ask ourselves, are there some wounds that cannot be healed? And I think what we're learning is that even the most grievous of wounds with enough love and divinity, those wounds can be closed. There's always a scar that remains from the depth of those wounds, but those wounds can be healed, and then we can create a future where we can still live together as one.
Well, thank you very much. As we said from the beginning, this was a very important discussion we've had here today. We hope it was helpful for everyone who's tuned in. It's a serious matter. It affects us all. We just hope and pray you're able to learn something, glean something here that will help you in your relationships with other people. So thank you so much for tuning in today. We do look forward to seeing you again next time. This is what we do at the American Religious Town Hall meeting. We gather around the table with various experts from different points of view and perspectives, but that's a part of what this program is all about and has been for many, many decades. But for now, the charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. So now, friends, until next week at the same time and over the very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.